The credibility of higher education at South Africa's top institutions is on a decline. The Times Higher Education Emerging Economies University Rankings 2018 comprises a total of 378 universities from 42 countries across the 4 continents. The scores are calculated from, amongst other things, your teaching, which of course includes the learning environment. They also look at research, they also look at some research influence as well, and some international outlook. But to talk to us more about the latest rankings, we are now joined in our studios here in Johannesburg by Professor Ahmed Bawa. He is CEO of University of South Africa. Prof, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here.
Not so good news by looking at the latest rankings, of course. Where did we go wrong?
First of all, I think we have to be quite careful about the rankings, right?
Okay.
For several reasons. First of all, there are many of them. So, it's a risk to look at just one of them and say, things have changed. But secondly, I think that we also have to just understand that it's a mixed picture, because some universities have really moved up the rankings, some have dropped.
Yes.
So it's a mixed picture. But there are some good reasons, I think. First of all, we've had 3 years of turmoil in our system. And it's not unexpected that some of there would be an impact of that, on the way in which our universities are performing. But secondly, I think we have to just understand that the rankings don't necessarily measure the kinds of things that our universities are expected to do. Let me give you one example.
Okay.
So our universities, all of them, all 26 of them, are meant to be vital organizations for social mobility, getting students in from working class backgrounds and getting them through the system, if you like. Though that's not measured in any serious way by these ranking systems, because there's such a lot of bias towards research and the impact of research and so on. But having said that, there's a third reason, I think, which we have to just bear in mind. The top 2 universities in these rankings are Chinese universities. And if you look carefully at those numbers, what one sees, in fact, is that these universities are highly differentiated. They are really research-intensive universities. And so they measured, the design of the ranking system really suits that kind of university.
Okay.
So University of Cape Town, ranks at number 11, but its student-to-staff ratio is about double that of these other, these Chinese universities, for example.
All right. So basically it's unfair to compare certain universities with others. You made mention of China, and it seems like it's doing very well as compared to the previous years.
Yeah. Well, you have to understand that there's a massive investment in higher education in China. And, and notwithstanding the fact that there's been a significant increase in funding this year at our universities from the state, what is also true, though, is that over the last 10 to 20 years, there's been a chronic underfunding of our higher education system. And I think we're seeing the impact of that now, But I also want to say that the Chinese system is a very large system, thousands of universities. So, and we've only got 26 of them. So the Chinese system can be highly differentiated. They can say, look, we're going to have 10 or 20 universities which are going to just be purely research-intensive universities. And that plays into the ranking system, if you like. Yeah.
So it's basically unfair to measure our universities to those of the developed world.
Well, then let me turn that around a little bit. I think that what the ranking systems don't do is measure the things that our universities do well.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk about the positive side of things. What is it that we're doing well here?
If you look at one of the most fascinating pieces of details for me in this rankings, this recent rankings, is the impact of research, what we call the citations.
Yeah.
And UCT's citations was way ahead of those Chinese universities. So in other words, if you look at the average level of the average number of times that a piece of research is cited by other scientists in other parts of the world, the UCT papers do much better than the papers in those Chinese universities.
We also have the Stellenbosch University as well.
Of course.
And Wits University in terms of research.
So I think that we shouldn't knock ourselves too hard, Secondly, of course, those other universities don't have the role of social mobility and so on. And our universities do brilliantly at that. So there are things that our universities do very well, which are not measured by the ranking system.
All right, so I was mainly focusing on the contributions towards society as well.
But we also have very good research institutions.
We do, yes, certainly. So the University of Wits has dropped to the 12th position from the 8th the year before. University of Cape Town dropped 5 position to rank number 9. What are we attributing this to? Because these are the very same institutions that you have just made mention of, the fact that they're good at research and citations.
Look, there are a couple of things we have to keep in mind. First of all, I don't think we can just wish away the fact that we had 2.5 years, 3 years of turmoil. And that has an impact, of course. And I think that we have to come to grips with the fact that universities are kind of organizations that need stability. If there's too much of turmoil, then things begin to
So it starts there with leadership.
Exactly, and leadership, and trying to ensure that the system works well for our students, and trying to ensure that the students are in fact in classrooms and studying hard and so on. The second thing, of course, is I think that, as I mentioned earlier, just this point about the fact that there's been cuts in research funding. We've seen over the years, decreases in subsidy. And then, of course, over the last 3 or 4 years, kind of fixed fee levels. So what that means, in essence, is that the funding levels have dropped. And that, again, is an indication that we need to fix up those things. But having said that, this year's subsidy to the universities has been very improved, in fact, and that's a very good sign.
It's a good sign, But moving away from what the government and those in leadership can do to improve on our institutions, let's talk about the institutions themselves.
Right.
What should they do to improve on these rankings going forward, and the quality of education in general?
So, of course, there are a number of things that go into this ranking system, right? One of them is clearly research output. Secondly, kind of measures of quality of research output, the citations. UCT does very well at that, WITS does very well at that. Thirdly, a very important measure is the extent to which our universities are international. So in other words, the number of international students we have, the extent to which we have international staff, and so on. And
how are we doing on that front, by the way?
Now, that's a very big challenge for us, because we also have a challenge in South Africa to try and ensure that young South Africans that are coming through the system are afforded the opportunity of working at our universities. You want to give them a chance to grow into scientists and researchers and so on. But of course, what that means is that spaces that could have been taken up by international staff aren't being taken, they're being taken up by South Africans. So that's another challenge for us, if you like. Whereas the Chinese universities reach out to the whole world.
So would you personally say there's still a long way to go for us, or should we not really be bothered by these rankings?
Look, I have to say I'm not a fan of rankings.
Okay, I can pick that up from the conversation.
But secondly, I wouldn't be too bothered about this little blip. If you consider that, that there were a few days in 2016 when we thought the higher education system was going to shut down. I think we've done really well, to
with the limited resources that
to
we
hold
have.
things together.
True.
So I'm not bothered. I mean, I have to say that we have to keep plugging away, ensure that we do good teaching, good research.
Okay. All right, but we are on the right track. Prof, we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you so much for coming through.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Professor Ahmed Bawa. He is CEO of University South Africa. We were looking at the latest rankings on universities here at home, of course, comparing to the other countries. It's 8 o'clock on